Alright, so we're going to make a pie crust today. I apologize for the hair. I did everything I could and nothing's looking good today, so fuck it. I'm starting off by, for the recipe that I'm doing, I need to pre-bake my pie shell, so I've preset my oven to 375. It is generally recommended for pies to let the pie crust sit in the fridge for about half an hour before you roll it out, but I'm not going to do that today. So, first of all, I'm going to put my 2 cups flour into my bowl here. Alright, one. And it's really important that we do use a relatively straight edge to do this. Actually, I probably should have used the other end of this knife because usually knives have a little bit of a curve to the back here, but generally it's going to be accurate enough. Alright, and now I need a teaspoon of salt. Now I was able to find my half teaspoon, so I'm going to go ahead and do 2 of these. Right. And then it's 2/3 cups butter to begin with, and normally these will require like a shortening, so using like Crisco or something like that is actually is going to give you a better crust, but you have to keep in mind that that is basically pure hydrogenated oil, and so it's going to be really bad for your heart, especially in the long run. So you know, a butter-based crust, not the best thing in the world. It doesn't work as well, but that being said, it's way healthier. So it requires 2/3 cups, it says leaf flour or shortening. I'm going to be using butter instead, and then 2 tablespoons of chilled butter. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pre-chop up my butter with my butter knife here. All right. Just into smaller bits so it doesn't beat up my pastry blender too much. If you don't have a pastry blender, you could use, there's a fork method where you basically are crisscrossing forks over it to break it apart. So what I have in here is going to be a 1/2 cup butter, because it's thick as a 1/2 cup. Now you'll see on here that it's got the guide here for 2/3 cups, or for the 1/2 cup, and it has a 1/3 cup mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it here at the 3rd mark, and then I'm going to use this side of it, right? Because 3/3 is what makes a full cup, 2 sticks is a full cup, right? So before I open it up all the way, I'm going to go ahead and just press on the outside a little bit just to create a little bit of a line so I can see where to cut. And from there, once I have that cut, now I've been doing this long enough that I know about where 2 tablespoons is, so I'm just going to eyeball that a little bit right there. If you want to, you could also just turn it around and use the lines for marking your 2 tablespoons there. And now I can put that away. Now you'll see that I've prepped my water here by putting ice cubes in it. You need your water to be completely ice cold. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start cutting the butter here. So I'm going to use my little pastry blender here and just kind of press in there, and I'm just breaking it down in small bits, and I'm also, by doing this, I'm pressing the butter into the flour, right? And so it's going to create basically an unevenness that we actually want in our final product, where it's incorporated into the butter, but it's not really well mixed. Otherwise, you know, we would just be throwing this in a mixer and doing it that way. So by using a pastry blender, we're creating these little pockets of butter, which once it bakes, the butter is going to create little voids in the crust, which is what's going to make it flaky. Right? So once I see that this is starting to get fairly well incorporated, I got rid of my knife already. A lot of times I'll actually use a knife instead of my hands for this, because these can get sharp and you can cut yourself on them. I know from personal experience. So, and this is an older pastry blender, so it bends a lot for right now. I'm meaning to replace it, but alright. So once I feel like I've got my butter relatively well incorporated to begin with, I'm going to start going 1 tablespoon at a time, and we go up to, well, we're starting off with 4 tablespoons, so I'm going to sprinkle that around, mix it a little bit, that perfectly well. Do it again, mix it around. And then from there you want it to be kind of from feel, right? So, and I'll show you what I mean by that when we get to that step. But I'm going to continue to cut, and what you're going to find is you see that it's starting to create these larger flakes, and it's hopefully you're getting less of what can be identified as flour and more of what kind of starts looking more like that dough there. And once I get to a certain step here, I should be able to put this together into a ball, right? And if I feel like, okay, this is really dry and it's not coming together, then I can start adding more ice water to this. Yeah, it is so time to place this thing. Woohoo! Alright, so I come in here, I start trying to press this together, and it's falling apart. You see it's not holding a ball at all, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put in 1 tablespoon here. You'll usually go like tablespoon by tablespoon because you don't want it to get too wet, otherwise it's going to be a royal pain in the ass when you start to roll it out. And I'm looking at it and it's still a little bit dry down there at the bottom, so this is probably going to be my last one because it's borderline now. And so generally you're going to see like it's kind of flaking off into little peas here for the most part. It's getting nice and small, and you can see that it's generally pretty flaky. Alright. So I've cleaned off my pastry knife. And I should be able to start to form this into a nice little ball. It's okay if a little bit flakes off, right? It doesn't have to be completely firm. It's a little brittle. I could probably go with another tablespoon there. But yeah, we're definitely getting to the point where it's starting to hold a ball, but you definitely don't want it to get too moist. So what putting it in the freezer or fridge for half an hour is going to do is it's actually going to let the water kind of move within the dough, and so you're going to have a more even consistency as far as the moisture is concerned. But I don't ever do it, so what it is. Alright, out of the way. So before I move out, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flour my surface here. Alright, and then I'm going to create a little ball here. So I rolled it on the surface a little bit to just try to pick up a little bit of flour on the outside, because what's going to happen when I'm starting to roll this out is it's going to want to stick to my rolling pin, and it's going to want to, you see it's going to kind of create this little bare spot underneath it, especially as it pushes out, and so it's going to want to stick to the counter. You could do this on parchment paper. That's generally a pretty good idea so that you can actually have an easier transfer. I'm not going to worry about it right now. So I'm not too concerned. You see that it's starting to brittle apart a little bit on the outside. That's fine. But I'm generally trying to maintain a circle here. I'm trying to even out the high spots. Now, if I knew where my other roller was, actually works better if you have like a steel or marble roller that doesn't have the handles on the outside, and it's going to be bigger than your outside pie dough. And what you can do is you can get little bands that go around these. I do have them for my other roller, which I don't know where it is. So, but you put those bands on there, and it goes to the thickness that you want. With this one being such a short roller, I can't use those bands, so I'm going to have to just get it about where I think it should be. And in this case, because this is going to be for a tartlet, I'm going to want this to be relatively thin here, right? And I'm doing another pie as well, so this is going to be, I'm not too terribly concerned if I have leftover dough, because I can apply that to the other pie. So, boom. There we are. So that's about right there. The these little cracks like that, I'm not going to worry too much about that. What I'm going to do, and I guess I might as well just show you guys, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to very gently, and it's not sticking to the counter, which is fabulous. I'm going to start bringing it up onto my roller, and I just roll it back like that. And I put my pie dish right there in the middle, and now I come and unroll it to get it in there. Now, flour has a tendency to rise, especially in all-purpose flour. A lot of times they have a little bit of a self-rising property to it, and they'll get air bubbles in them, and that's going to destroy your pie dough. So after I get this pressed in place here, I'm going to go ahead and grab a knife, and we're just going to go around and cut off all this foreskin. Yes, I said that. Because it's tartlet, I just need to come right up, so I don't need to go any higher than that. Now, normally, if I was doing a regular pie crust that wasn't in a tartlet pan, what you would do is you could use a fork, right, to create the shape all the way around, or you would pinch two spots and then you would just pinch them together, and you go around like that and do it nice and evenly. And if you do have breaks in it, right, where I guess because I'm doing a tartlet, I don't really have that issue as much. But if you have breaks in your dough, where it's a big crack like that guy, what you'll do is you'll just wet your finger and you'll brush both sides, and then you just pinch together, and that will be your little patch there. All right. So now I'm going to take a fork because of that air bubble issue, and I'm going to go around the side first, very careful, and I'll put little holes in here so that when those gas bubbles start to form, they're going to hopefully run into these little fork pokes that I have here, and they'll let the gas out before they create a big bubble. And what can happen, especially with something along these lines, is that the outsides can start to cave in, or the bubbles can push things out. So, you know, a lot of times I definitely prefer to do a pies that require me to bake with the filling in them, because then this is not as much of an issue, right? And then you see I'm going into the bottom here because this is going to be just as bad, and I just want to kind of go everywhere. I don't have to be perfect, exact, or fancy about this. I'm just poking. So when it comes time to bake this, what we're going to do is we're going to take some aluminum foil, and I'm going to press it down carefully into my pie dough. Okay. Now, you don't have to buy the ceramic weights that I'm going to be using today. You can use beans, you can use rice, anything that can go down here and become weighted in here so things don't rise up. These guys just washed with soap and water, and then I'm just going to put them in here, and that's going to be my weights in there. And the reason why I'm using it is so I'm not wasting food every time that I bake a pie dough. Now that came up, so this is going to go in for about 20 minutes. And while this is baking, I'm going to start on my filling. Alright, so this is going to be a little bit of a better example of kind of how to finish off a pie crust. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to give myself a little bit here, not a whole lot, of extra dough here. So that I have something to pinch, right? And this excess here can totally be used. You can use it for like a shortbread cookie or something along those lines. If you wanted to, you could use it for putting on top of your pie, whatever. And so, as you can see, this is not particularly attractive right now, so I wet my fingers a little bit. I have a little bit of a crack here, so I'm going to go ahead and mend that and patch that up a little bit. I'm going to roll it up and then pinch, roll it up, pinch, and I will admit that I am not the best at this, but that's okay. We can have a little bit more of a rustic looking pie. Pump, pinch, all the way around. And again, I'm going to go through with a fork and I'm going to poke all this. No, I have not put any like butter or greasing the pan or anything like that. I shouldn't have much in the way of issues with taking the pie out of the pan when I'm done here. See, this one's starting to split apart a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go in there, create some moistness, stick it, and that should help it kind of stay together a little bit better. Boom. And of course, the more even you are with how you trimmed this, the better it's going to look, right? And I think that's the area that I'm always not the best at. Boom. Boom. But there we go. So it's basic finishing. Again, you could do that, or you could do something like pressing down with a fork to kind of create that edge effect. This pie pan does not have a side lip on it. But of course you could have one that's like this where it has that lip on it. Which would, in my opinion, that's going to be more appropriate to use the fork to press it down in there for your finishing on that. And going around, poking this so that bubbles can't form. And I ended up using the dough that I used for the tartlet because I had kind of enough for that. It's going to be a little bit of a thin crust on this one, but considering the type of pie that I'm doing, that's okay by me. Alright, there you go guys. How to do pie crusts.